Hey everybody, welcome to another Couch Potato Racing video. In my previous video, I went over several non-driving tips and tricks for beginners. In this video, I'm going to go over a few tips, driving tips that might help you get up to speed faster. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing I wanted to talk about is weight transfer. Weight transfer occurs in many situations. When you accelerate, the weight goes to the back of the car. When you decelerate and brake, the weight's going to the front of the car. When you're in turns, the weight transfer is going to go to the outside of where you're turning. So if I'm turning right, the weight transfer is going to be on the left. We're going to start leaning to the left. If we're turning to the left, the weight's going to start transferring to the right. And I guess in my mind, I kind of think of like where the weight's transferring to is where I should have maybe the most traction. What comes into play there is the drivetrain. So front-wheel drive cars, rear-wheel drive cars, all-wheel drive cars. Say, you're accelerating, weight's going to transfer to the back, but your front wheels are the ones that are driving the vehicle. So when that happens, there's going to be a little more spin because the weight's kind of coming off those front wheels. I'm in the Mini Cooper right now, which is a front-wheel drive car, and we can actually demonstrate that real quick. So when I take off here, ignore the co-driver there. When I take off here, the weight's going to transfer back, and you're just going to kind of hear me spinning the front tires. So let's do that real quick. Let's get some RPMs up. Let's launch it. Let's see if we come back.
3 left, short.
The front wheels are trying to get traction.
5 left.
And on a wheel drive car, that's a good thing.
5 right, brake, hairpin right, 80.
Stop here real quick. So on a wheel drive car, the weight transferring to the back, it's a good thing on acceleration, because then those tires, they're pressing into the road more, they're getting more grip. On the front-wheel drive car, that's not the case, so that's something to consider, with weight transferring to the back. When weight's transferring to the front, in the case of a front-wheel drive car, those tires are having to do multiple duties. They're having to brake and they're trying to turn at the same time. And that's a lot of strain. So I think that's kind of like, if you've done circuit racing before, trail braking kind of comes into play there a bit. So trail braking, you're applying more pressure initially, and you're kind of letting it off as you go into the turn. That kind of allows the weight transfer to kind of stay towards the front while you keep that light pressure near the end. And it's also allowing the front tires to turn easier when they're not like under load from braking. So let's come up. We have a hairpin coming up here. Maybe I will try showing kind of the front weight transfer and under the heavy braking, kind of what happens there. So let's get up there, and I'm gonna like brake really heavily and try to turn. We're gonna kind of see the car just kind of slide forward. So if I brake really heavy and I try to turn, nothing's happening. I'm not turning. So that's where the trail braking kind of comes into play. You need to kind of brake heavier initially and be further back in this case, and then let that braking pressure off to allow the weight to come off the front and to allow the tires to actually do their turning job there. So let's kind of do the same thing on this next hairpin that's coming up here. It's gonna be a hairpin to the left, and I'm gonna brake kind of lighter, allowing the weight transfer to go forward. We want the grip in the front, but if I don't brake too hard, then the tires can still do their job of turning in the front. So let's give that a whirl here.
Hairpin left, tightens late, 50.
All right, so I'm braking. I'm not braking as hard, but I'm laying off the pressure now. I can just, the tires can do their job of
3
turning
right,
there.
short, 130.
So that's just something to consider there with front weight transfers. You don't want to have too much brake and too much weight transfer going on when you're trying to turn. So then, as you saw before, you'll just go straight forward. The tires can't handle turning and braking at the same time with all that weight on them, the weight transfer being thrown forward on them. So for side to side turning weight transfer, that can be kind of figured out pretty easily when you're just kind of driving on some straight corner or straight road here. You can kind of start throwing the car. You can kind of feel the back end kind of wanting to slide out, oversteer, maybe a little understeer
Caution,
too.
4 right, tightens
Wish you
2,
would turn
late
off the co-driver
60.
voice. And with rallying, you're wanting to basically always want to use that transfer to maybe kind of help get that car turning into the corner. But then you also need to compensate for that weight transfer by
4
counter
left,
steering.
and 4 right long,
So
and 4
I'm
left,
going to drive
70.
a little bit here and just kind of flick the car around. We can see how counter steering counteracts that weight transfer. So let's go here. I'm going to turn kind of hard here,
Into 5 left,
counter steer
90.
to get that weight transfer back over center. Turn hard, counter steer, get that weight back over center.
4 left, short, keep in,
And
40.
you can kind of use those kind of little flick movements to set yourself up for a
5
corner.
left, long, tightens late,
I
50.
believe that's called like a pendulum turn or a Scandinavian flick. It's kind of the same thing. So
Brake, 3 left, tightens
say
2,
I wanted
into
to
2
turn
right, long,
left up here, I
kings,
could kind of
over crest, 70.
get the car's momentum turned that way. That wasn't a good example, but kind of see how I kind of set myself up there without having to like do any handbrake or anything.
Kings,
I wasn't
into
using any
6
brake
right, keep
pressure
out,
there either.
100.
It's just kind of using that weight transfer to throw the car in the direction that you want it to go. So it's good practice just to find some straights or even corners and
5
just
left, tightens,
practice
over
counter
crest,
steering
and 5
that
right,
action
60.
of the weight going to the opposite side. And let's go a little faster
4
here.
left, and 4
And we
right,
can
tightens,
try looking up
40.
some turns here so I could,
3 left, long, into
the weight
4
that
right,
way.
long, don't cut.
I'm not using any brake pressure here to do this throwing around, just kind of using excessive turns to throw the weight around
And
to get the
4
car
left,
sliding,
into 3 right,
and then counter
short.
steering to get the weight back in the center of the car for the next turn.
And 4 left, very long, into
Excessive.
3 right, short.
I'm obviously going
Caution,
kind of
don't
excessive
cut.
here. This is
60.
the fastest way to get through this course, but it's a good way to practice just getting to grips with how the car
Kings.
handles. Whoop, a little too much there. Yeah, there can't get to a point where. Oh, I think I'm not going to have enough. Oh, yeah, there we go. If the weight transfers too far, too fast in one direction, that's when you're going to lose the car. It's going to go into a spin. That's going to be pretty hard to recover from. So it's finding those limits of the weight transfer going from one to the other and being able to know like how much you can handle counteracting that. And, yeah. So I think that's all I wanted to say on weight transfer. So yeah, we'll move on to the next tip now. All right, so we're back here at the start. The next thing I wanted to talk about is a concept from circuit racing as well. The slow in, fast out. I think the same kind of applies to rally racing, at least my ignorant knowledge, it does. And as an example, we're back at the start where we have those hairpins coming up. And if you recall, when I was going too fast before and I tried to apply heavy braking, I just slid straight. So where slow in, fast out comes into play is I need to go into that corner slower. That way I can actually make the turn and be faster on the exit instead of having to going too fast, have to come to a complete stop to avoid crashing into a barrier, and then turn around and slowly get back up to speed again. So if we come up to that first hairpin again, this time we'll go in a little slower. We're not going to be braking as hard. We're going to allow the easy on the braking. We're
Heading
slow in,
left,
now we're
tightens
faster
late,
out.
50.
Same here, slower in.
3 right,
Faster
short,
out.
130.
And that adds up over the course of the stage to if you're going, cooking it too hot into a corner, you're probably gonna have to end up over braking and having to go a lot slower. Especially important to be able to come out fast on where you have straightaways that are after the corners, because that's where you're gonna make up a lot of speed. If you're having to come out slower because you made a mistake, then you're gonna lose time across that entire straightaway area. So really think about slow in, fast out when you're starting out. And I mean, you'll slowly get faster and faster going into the corners, but start slower, get used to those weight transfer. And then as you get better and better, you get faster and faster, both in and out of the corners. So I think that's everything for that tip. So now we'll move on to the next one. The next thing I want to talk about is the handbrake. When I first got the game, I was under the impression I'd be using the handbrake all the time, just from watching rally videos on YouTube, and like, oh, they're always pulling the handbrake. I want to be so cool. I've kind of discovered that that's not the case, at least for me yet. When I was trying to use the handbrake a lot when I first started, and I was just spinning out everywhere. And so I've really cut back on the usage of it, and I actually rarely use it. Even for a lot of hairpins, I don't use it that much. I've kind of only used it like on really tight hairpins, or when I've maybe cooked it just a little bit too hard into a corner, and I might need it to help throw me around a little bit. So think about maybe the whole slow in, fast out. Practice going in slower, and then get faster and faster at that as you get better and better. This is something I'm still practicing myself. So let's come up to, I restarted again. So let's go back up to the first hairpin here. Let's just see what happens if I grab the handbrake. I guess while I'm going up there, when you do grab the handbrake, I think what I've noticed is that you want to just kind of do short, hard pulls. You don't want to do kind of long, drawn out pulls. That'll kind of lead you into a spin more. I've also kind of noticed that you probably want to use it, if you're going to use it, you probably want to use it near the apex of the corner. Maybe, as you get better and better, I'm sure you could probably use it earlier and earlier to kind of just slide it all the way around. But when you're learning, maybe use it for those tighter hairpins or square left, square rights, and just do a nice short, hard pull when you hit the apex. So let's come up here. Yeah, this first time I'm gonna do kind of a harder pull, just to kind of show that I don't really actually need it and actually throws me off. So let's come in here. Coming in hot, I pull it, it just throws me around too much. I'm sure I could get better at that. I probably need to maybe counter steer earlier. Let's come back up here. Try it again. I guess I also pulled it there a little too early. I wasn't at the apex yet. So let's get a little turn here to spin ourselves around. Let me try that again. I'm gonna try doing a nice little pull, maybe when I get closer to the apex of the corner. Let's see how that affects things. Getting a little hot. Oop. Yeah, I'm still learning this a lot, so this might not be the best tip to learn from you, but if anything, maybe take away that you don't need to use the handbrake as much when you're starting out. I'll show how I maybe typically take that corner initially, and that's frustrating. That's one thing I'm not a big fan of here in the early versions, is that it basically automatically restarts you if you start going in reverse too much. I'm not gonna go as far this time. Let's try here. Using the handbrake, is kind of fun to do some 180s when you're on a tight road. So for these kind of wider hairpins, what I usually do is I'll come in, my brake, and I just kind of use the braking to get it.
Late 50.
Let's try it again here. come in. So tight little pull there, and it's it throws me off
3 right,
quite a bit. I'm still
short,
learning that,
130.
so maybe consider going, the whole slow and fast out. We're beginners. I'm a beginner too here, still learning. Maybe don't go for that handbrake quite as much until you're better, better than me, obviously. I do use it in some places on pavement. I find it's a little more handy on those tight hairpins. There's another hairpin like way up further on this stage where I do grab it a little bit. I'm at a much lower speed at that point. It helps me flip that car around. It's a 180 hairpin up there. So just, reduce the usage of it when you're first starting out, and then gradually incorporate it more into your driving as you get better and as you get better than me. So that's it for that topic. Let's move on to the next one. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is learning where you can and can't cut the course. Obviously, the co-driver, if you've watched my previous video and learned about the pace notes, he will call out some like obvious cuts and some obvious don't cuts. But there are other places where those aren't called out that you can find to make cuts. And some places you might think you can make a cut, but then you'll get a penalty. Those penalties are for me just sitting here idle on the track. So as an example, this very first corner up here, there's a small cut you can make without getting penalized, but it's not called out by the co-driver. So if we go up there, you can actually cut this corner quite a bit. So I can actually come in here quite a bit without getting penalized, and kind of cut that corner, make it a little straighter. Same thing on this hairpin here. I've found that you can actually, if you're coming in slower, you can actually cut it quite a bit. You can get way up in here. I mean, there's a little bit of a dip there. Oh, see, in that case, I found the limit. There is a limit as how far you can cut that corner. So if we go back, you can see my lines there. I have cut this before without getting penalized, so I'm just gonna cut it a little too much. But you should be able to get through there without getting a penalty.
Hairpin left, tightens late 50.
Yeah, so just explore the course, figure out where you can make cuts, where you can't, figure out where you're gonna get penalized.
3 right,
It's not really
short,
marked
130.
where those penalties are gonna occur, so you gotta kind of play with it around and figure it out. Up here's another one.
Caution,
This,
4 right, tightens
corner to
2,
the
late
right
60.
here. You can actually cut this guy quite a bit. You can actually come down through here.
4 left and 4 right,
In
long.
that case, I found the limit
and
again.
4 left,
All of a sudden, I'm
70.
finding limits for these corners, but if you can cut that a bit without getting penalized. So it's just a matter of learning where you can and can't cut, how far you can cut. So that's another tip. Now let's move on to the next one. All right, so the next tip I want to talk about is kind of goes back to the weight transfer a little bit, and it's about using the track to help pull you when needed. So when taking corners, the weight transfer wants to kind of pull you to the outside of that corner. And in some places the track has, so if we look at the screen here, over here on the left, there's a nice little ditch. And in this case, it's not a good place for me to use it, but there are some corners where those ditches can help. If you put your front tire into them, they can help keep that weight transfer from pulling you out, and maybe going off to the other side of the track. You can kind of use those ditches to help pull you in, keep you inside the inside of the corner. Up ahead are a few examples of that. So let's go check those out. So get in gear here, and along this hill, there's one that I use quite a bit.
Into 5 left, 90.
You can use, right there's a nice little one to kind of use a little bit. Right
5
here,
left, long,
there's
tightens
this little
late
dip that
50.
helps pull you in, keeps you from kind of getting on the
3
outside.
left, tightens 2
Right here's
into
another
2
one.
right, long, kinks, over crest,
Using this ditch
70.
right here helps pull you in and sets you up kind of nicely for the next corner. That's not really one you need to
into
use.
6 right, keep
It's just
out,
kind of figuring
100.
out where you can use those the track features to help
5 left, tightens,
counteract
over crest,
that weight
and
transfer a
5
bit.
right,
So right here's
60.
one, kind of getting inside here,
4 left,
helps keep
and
you,
4
pull
right,
you in.
tightens, 40. 3 left,
Another
long,
one, kind of
into
dip
4 right,
into a little
long,
bit.
don't cut.
Right here, we're gonna try to
and 4 left
use
into
those
3
track
right,
features
short.
to keep you pulled in. There's another one right here. You want to, if you can, try
And 4
to
left,
miss that
very
one.
long, into 3 right, short. Caution, don't cut, 60.
So yeah, just be on the lookout for those like
Kings.
the sides of the road that in corners
Into
where it might
5
help you
left.
counteract
5
that
right.
weight transfer of trying to pull you to the outside of the track. In some
And
cases, you
5
don't
left,
want to use them. There
over
might be like,
crest,
in this
50.
case, there's a big old bump there. We wouldn't want to obviously use that. So yeah, just it takes learning the track, and which I guess is kind of counterintuitive to the concept of rally, where you kind of only do a Rico
6 left, very long,
condensate slap, and
tightens.
then you do
Keep
it
in,
once after
over
that.
crest.
I've been doing these stages over and over again, so I kind of have a lot of this stuff memorized, which I guess maybe is kind of counterintuitive to the spirit of rallying, but it is what it is. Just kind of keep your eyes open for those places where you can use the track to help move you along faster. So the last thing I want to talk about kind of relates to the previous one about being on the lookout for places where the track can help you out, and that is try to practice looking ahead. It's hard in rally when you're first starting out. You're kind of just trying to avoid the thing right in front of you. But the more you can start to like pull your gaze from like right in front of the hood up further out, then you can start finding those places where you could maybe use the track, or also avoid hazards, but also use the track to your advantage. And it also kind of helps if you're looking ahead. You're preparing instead of always reacting. So it's kind of a more of a what's the term? Be proactive instead of reactive, I think is the term I was searching for there. So yeah, just it's hard to do when you're first starting out, but try to pull your eyes from the front of the hood out further, looking towards that next corner, that next opportunity. So just work on that as you're starting out here. All right, so I think that about covers what I wanted to go over in this video. We went over figuring out the weight transfer. It's gonna be different for every car. So just have to get used to that, learn how that car reacts to changes in direction. We went over kind of slow in, fast out. If you apply that, you'll get faster and faster in and faster out. We went over kind of trying to maybe limit the use of the handbrake a little bit when you're first starting out. I'm still not great at it. I'm learning on that still. We went over cutting, finding where you can cut, where you can't cut, and we also went over trying to look ahead as much as possible to prepare for the next thing and find opportunities to be faster. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to cover in this video. I might do another video. I've been learning kind of left foot braking and heel toe downshifting braking, so I might go over that and maybe some clutch kicks stuff in a future video. I guess it's kind of just beyond maybe beginner, intermediate level stuff. But I've found that that's helped my times as well, especially left foot braking, and that's been really helpful. So yeah, I'll go over that I think maybe in a future video. But yeah, hope this was helpful and enjoyed it, and I hope if you did like it, maybe you do the whole subscribe, like, comment thing, help my channel grow here. And let's continue this journey on getting better at rallying.